peer tutoring and middle school academic achievement. I'm Emily Shellman. I'm a graduate student at Morningside University. This year I will be teaching middle school special education at Southeast Junior High. It'll be my first year in the district. And this is a literature review. And the title of the literature review is The Effects of Peer Tutoring on Mathematics as an Accommodation for Achievement for Middle School Special Education Students. The problem. Math proficiency rates for 7th grade students dropped 11.9% and 3.9% for 8th grade students. This came directly from the Iowa Department of Education to 2020. The data is from 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019 school years because, as we all know, COVID hit and we did not participate in standardized testings in Iowa in the 2020 school year. The problem. So the problem is the drop in proficiency rates for middle school students. A lot of times you hear this described as the math achievement gap when we're referring to it in math. And it's happening all over the world, not just in Iowa or in the United States. And we've also seen an increase in the number of special education students enrolled. And with inclusion, it can be difficult for teachers to find effective interventions to help those struggling learners. Why me? Why did I pick this? It's a topic that hits home. I've been a special education teacher for the past 4 years. And it's become an increasing issue. I've noticed from both districts that I've worked for so far. And I wish to just break the cycle, not just for students, but for teachers as well. So past research that I found really focused on word problems and fractions. It was explicit instruction in word problems or with word problems for students over a course of almost a month with a teacher. And they did see increases in scores, but the limitation here was that they still couldn't help students that were just making careless mistakes, like when they would write it down on their paper and they wrote down the wrong numbers, or students were writing the numbers backwards, things like that. Or just not being able to solve once they had the word problem figured out. We also had systematic explicit instruction of fractions, and this was focused in the elementary, middle, and high level. This was a Shin and Bryant study that focused on visuals and systematic instruction, and it was, again, a teacher-focused intervention, but the limitations here was that it strictly focused on addition and subtraction of fractions. It didn't talk about negatives. It didn't talk about multiplication or division of fractions. An impact for the problem that we stated, the growing achievement gap, were students really were affected. Maloney et al. Found that math anxiety was a leading factor of issues in math. Math anxiety is an adverse reaction to being placed in an environment that requires mathematic thinking and solutions. So students were getting math anxiety that created behavior problems in math and in the classroom, and then also those adverse grades or scores. Math achievement can also affect students with the general demands of the world. As everybody knows, yes, we have calculators, but can students really keep a budget without knowing the impact of math in their world? Can they manage a bank account, loans, and know what they're talking about, and preparing food even with fractions and things like that? Teachers can also be affected or impacted by the proficiency rates of students. Some school districts and even teachers are still evaluated based on student scores, especially on standardized testing. So if those students are performing poorly, then the district can be penalized or teachers can be penalized, which can create a lot of stress and anxiety for teachers as well. And a lot of teacher turnover for pressure to teach certain things, teach a certain way, canned curriculum. Parents can also be affected. If that math anxiety continues, they can have that math anxiety. They can create that for their students. They also might not be able to help their students with their homework when they bring homework home and ask for help. So the theoretical framework that I focused my study on was Bandura's social learning theory. Bandura really focuses on the understanding that kids are affected by their experiences and their social situations or those around them. And I believe that peer tutoring really creates a space where people work together to succeed academically and socially. So implementing that same age or peer tutoring in general for special education students, I think that that really depicts Bandura's social learning theory. Goals and objectives. So the rising problem, as I discussed, was the proficiency rates for students in 7th and 8th grade, and it's on the decline. The purpose of this review was to investigate the relationship between peer tutoring and academic achievement for special education students in the middle school. Articles that were used I found on the Morningside HJF library. The hypothesis was that same-age peer tutoring would be a more suitable accommodation for students with special needs in mathematics in middle school. So I really focused on middle school classrooms ranging from 6th to 7th grade that were inclusive and utilized peer tutoring. That was the focal point for this literature review. I found 12 peer-reviewed journal articles. And then I organized the data sets into an annotated bibliography and went from there. And you'll see the annotated bibliography on slide 13. So databases, this is just a list of databases that I used that I found on the resources page for the Morningside Library. And I had very limited search terms. I really focused on special education, those with exceptionalities, special needs, peer tutoring, peer intervention, middle school, which could be limited to middle school, junior high, 7th and 8th grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, etc. And I did focus on the social learning theory as well. So procedures used to find and collect data was focusing on those key terms, focusing on relevancy, so within the last 10 years, and I really strictly focused on peer-reviewed articles published on those resources that I had. First, I also excluded anything that strictly focused on peer tutoring, not on peer tutoring, sorry, and articles based outside the educational environment or articles that were beyond secondary learning. And then you can see here an example of my annotated bibliography. I narrowed it down to just the APA citation, a brief synopsis of the article, key terms, and then with those key terms, I narrowed it down to collection themes that I found throughout all of the articles. And then you can see those collection themes then narrowed down again on slide 16. So on to the results. Again, after articles were found and narrowed down into the annotated bibliography, I narrowed them down even more with the common themes that I found throughout the research. those specifically involving peer tutoring. And then within those 12 articles, I narrowed it down to grade level, subject, and outcomes. And honestly, the outcomes for all of the articles that I reviewed indicate growth in academic achievement. You can see here, this is the second table broken down into common themes. I also have the study author and date here. Peer tutoring, the type of peer tutoring, because I found throughout there are multiple types of peer tutoring, same age, typically same grade level. Class-wide peer tutoring usually includes same age, obviously, but they're doing it throughout. It's not just an intervention, but it's throughout with the whole classroom. And then there's cross-age peer tutoring, which happened with a typically more experienced or more skilled tutee with a less skilled tutor. I also have it broken down here into subject and then grade level as well. I'll move this down so you can see. So, was the hypothesis proven? Overall, I do have proof that peer tutoring is a successful intervention, but I don't have enough data to support my hypothesis that same age peer tutoring is a more suitable accommodation or intervention for special education students in mathematics. There was a lack of relevant research that supported this. Only a quarter of the studies even mention special education or students with disabilities in the mathematics classroom. All right, connection to past research. So Bandura's social learning theory states that cognitive abilities and the image of self really revolves around those interactions and surroundings. Peer tutoring at its height includes social interaction and engagement, and the end goal is improved cognitive abilities. The previous problem-solving interventions and the fraction intervention were successful, but they really lacked a variety. I mean, they really focused on word problems and fractions. And peer tutoring can be really versatile. It can be used with a different level of any level of students with varying abilities and in all subject areas, and you could see that from the data. Students can get math anxiety, completing everyday tasks can be difficult, and actually rejection from universities and careers came up as an implication for poor math achievement as well. Again, teachers or districts could get negative marks on performance assessments due to student scores and a lot of self-doubt and teacher turnover, and then parents again could get that the hereditary math anxiety continued throughout their life, or not being able to help students with their work at home. Limitations. First, it is possible that some studies were missed in spite of my efforts to find all of the literature that I could. My realm of search items was very limited as I focused on special education students, middle school, and the mathematics classroom. Second, there was a limited number of studies reviewed from my limited search terms, so it was really difficult to find studies. And third, while all of the studies examined involved a form of peer tutoring, less than half included mathematics, and less than a quarter examined peer tutoring with special education students. So it was very difficult to find relevant data. Due to that, my recommendations for the future, if somebody else takes on this study, I really think that broadening those search items, maybe focusing on special education as a whole, not just in a specific subject area. Also, more studies need to be conducted focusing on peer tutoring alone, but also more studies focused on struggling math learners. A lot of studies that I found were for other subjects, and you can see that in my results table on slide 16. Thanks for tuning in if you made it this far. If you have any specific questions for me, you can email me at my Morningside email posted here. This here is a list of references that I pulled data from for this particular slideshow. And to give credit where credit is due, for Slide Carnival, that is where I found this awesome slideshow. Thanks, everybody.